This is the Moza AirCross 2, not to be confused with the Moza Air 2. If you're wondering if your camera is supported by this gimbal, on the box, it tells you which cameras are supported. That's nice, isn't it? I've been using this the past couple of weeks, my Sony A7 III, and today I'm gonna be talking about what I like, what I don't like, show you lots of video, the different modes this has, and that's gonna be what the video is about. So this is the AirCross 2. Now, it is not designed as a successor to the Air 2. It's designed as a more versatile, kind of compact version, which supports still a high payload, but a little bit less of a high payload compared to the Air 2. So this actually supports 7 pounds, whereas the Air 2 would support about 9.25 pounds. This is also a pound and a half lighter than the Air 2. I'm a big fan of Moza, and especially the Moza Air 2. I've been using it for a long time. I've really abused it, as in thrown it in and out of different situations. It's taken a beating, and it held up really, really well. Never really had any issues with it. There's a couple of little things that need to be fixed, which they have done very well with this, which I'll talk about. Overall, it's a pretty solid gimbal, so I like what Moza does. So this is obviously smaller and lighter than the Air 2, but with that, the design quality and the build is not quite as good. I'd say it's a bit more plasticky, almost feels toy-like compared to the Air 2. And if you've used the Air 2, you're gonna notice the difference. If you've never used the Air 2, then you might think this is great. And it is, it's still built well. It's just not built as well as the Air 2 is. It has a wheel on the side here, which you can use to control certain things. Out of the box by default is for your follow focus. I've never been a fan of using follow focus. I just trust my Sony autofocus really well, so I haven't needed to use it. So what I actually did is I changed this so it was controlling my axes going this way, just because with gimbals, I find often the horizon can go a little bit skew with, and if you use this, you can quickly adjust it on the fly if you need to. That being said, I haven't had any issues with the horizon on this changing. You have a joystick on here with some buttons as well, but you do have less buttons than you have with the Air 2, which means the controlling aspects of the gimbal and how you access certain modes is a little bit different. Something else I really like now, it has axes that lock, which means right now it's flip-flopping around, but if we lock them and we want to now travel, this isn't moving around, it's not flopping in your bag, things aren't getting scratched because it's moving around, it's not a pain to carry, so I like that, that's a good thing. It should be a standard on all gimbals now. Something else they've done which I really like is they've changed the battery now. Before you had 4 batteries that you had to kind of feed in, they were like bigger AA batteries, and they were really hard to get in and then get back out again. You had to kind of like stick your finger in to pop them out, and it just wasn't a great experience. So now they've moved to this one-piece battery, which you just take out and then can charge. It's USB-C, hour and a half of charging, gives you 12 hours of battery life, according to the spec sheet anyway. So once you're done with that and it's charged, you literally just put it back in. It can only go in one way, it clips in, and that's it. Very straightforward, I like that. It has rubber covers on where the axes connect to the gimbal here, which means before, if these were loose and flapping around, you might get a little bit of scratching. The metal would scratch because it's metal on metal, or even if you had a lens, which when it was flopping around, it might hit part of the gimbal and something's gonna get scratched because it's metal on metal grind, and you don't have that problem now. It's definitely more compact because it's smaller than the Air 2, which means it's obviously gonna go into a bag a lot easier. If you wanna put it into the side of your bag, the tripod part of your bag, then you could do that too. Legs obviously come off. This is all attached, this is all one piece, but the legs come off. You'll see when you turn the gimbal on the power button on the wheel here, there's actually an RGB light. So that may seem like a cool feature, and it is, it looks nice, but I'd say it's also a negative, which I'll talk more about in a bit. So as you just saw, to actually turn this on, you click and hold the button on the side here. This took me a while to figure out, and I know that there is like a power button on there, but I didn't read the instruction manual. I'm guilty of never reading instruction manuals, and I kept pushing the red button here, much like the Moza Air 2 to turn on, and yeah, that doesn't work. So the power button is on the wheel, you click and hold that, and then that engages the gimbal, that turns it on. It took me about 10 minutes to figure that one out. I'd read the manual if I was you. The way that you actually balance this is a little bit different. One part's a little bit different. So you see that this is actually an L bracket here. So you untwist this knob here, pull the button that says pull, so you can't really mess it up, and then slide that out. So we're on an L bracket, which means you can actually mount it both regular, that way, landscape, and you can also go to vertical if you wanted to. Blame Jesse Driftwood for that one, forcing his vertical video goodness on everybody. But yeah, so if you want to go landscape or portrait, you can do both with the gimbal. One of the first gimbals I think that actually does that. It's a nice feature if you want to use it. Again, because I didn't read the manual, it took me a little while to figure out how to get into the menus, because there isn't a menu button on here. The way you actually get in is you click and hold the red button there, and that will take you directly into the menu so you can change all your settings, do your auto calibration, that kind of thing. I guess I should really read manuals of things. I think that's what we're learning from today's video. A7 III balance is just fine with the 1635 f4 on here. On the plate that they want you to use. If you want to use a cage or your own plate, or you want to use a grip, anything that puts the camera up a little bit too high there, doesn't work. You cannot balance it. So please bear that in mind, because I spent a very long time trying to do it and it's just not possible. So what modes do you have with the AirCross 2? I'm gonna go over them all now. It's a pretty standard set, same ones you get on most gimbals now. I'll show you what the video looks like with each mode and then how you use it too. You get to the different modes on the gimbal by a combination of the D-pad buttons there and also the trigger. By default, when you turn the gimbal on, it's just gonna be in the mode which allows you to control each of the individual axes, lock them off or follow if you want to. So to get to inception mode, another mode a lot of people like to use now, push the D-pad 3 times to the right and that'll take you to inception mode. Inception mode actually gives you 3 options: continuous spin, a 180 spin, then it stops, or a 360 spin, then it stops. POV mode, first person view mode, you get to by pushing the D-pad 3 times to the left. That's more of like a dream-like video where everything's smooth and flowy. There's no sudden movements, but it follows all of the movement of the gimbal. Selfie mode is achieved by pushing the trigger 3 times. The camera will then flip around, so if you want to vlog, do selfie stuff, you can do that too. You then of course have your regular pan follow modes as well, where it gives you access to control all of the gimbal. So if you want to control your tilt, roll and pan axes, you can lock them individually or you can have them follow the camera individually. If you want a shot where you're going to move the gimbal and nothing's going to move around at all, the camera's going to point the same direction, you'd have all the axes set to lock. That's nice if you need a shot that's going completely forwards or you need to run side by side to someone and you don't want any movement in the gimbal control here to affect the way that the camera points. If you want to make sure that the roll, so the FPV part of the FPV mode doesn't really do anything, you would have your roll axes locked and then your tilt axes followed and your pan axes on follow as well. So that way, no movement that way, but if we angle up or we go left or right, it follows the movements there. So to actually control which axes are locked and which axes aren't locked, the roll axis is controlled by the left button here. So if you click it, it will go from follow to lock. Tilt axis is the up, follow to lock. And then the pan axis is controlled by pushing the down button and that will change it from follow to lock. You can also control how fast the movements are on here just by turning the little D-pad here too. If you want to get into quick mode, so it's quickly following everything that you're doing, you literally push the D-pad to the right and that will change the pan axis, which is the only part that actually gives you the quick mode. If you click that to the right, F will change from F to Q, which means it's now from follow mode to quick follow mode, which is for faster movements, sporting events, if you're following cars, that kind of thing. So the video quality coming out of this is genuinely not bad. It's pretty good actually. There aren't really any micro jitters that I can see from any of the video that I've shot. I have had people ask and I've had a lot of reviewers I've seen say that they've had problems with micro jitters. Can't say I've had any of those issues with this. Genuinely, it's not too bad. If you like the video that I showed you, then you'll like this gimbal. If you didn't like that video for whatever reason, then you probably won't like this gimbal. So let's talk about problems with this gimbal. There's a big one for me, which greatly impacts my workflow. I shoot with my camera in this cage 95% of the time. I can take this in and out. This is the small rig half arca cage and I love it. The camera mounts directly to this plate here and then this goes directly in and I can lock that off, which means I can take this in and out quickly to be able to shoot both photos, and then when I want to shoot video I put it back into this and we're good to go. But to balance this camera in this cage on here, it puts it up a little bit, maybe 1.5 inches, and it will not balance. The center of gravity becomes too high. This arm here is just too short, so it's just not possible to balance. Even worse if you want to use a grip because it's up even higher. So to me, that's a big problem. With either of these, it's way under the technical 7-pound limit that this gimbal can support, but the center of gravity, I keep referring to it as the center of gravity, I think that's what it is. It just becomes too high and it's just not possible to balance. So if you use either of these or you want to use any of these, you really have to consider whether you're going to be willing to change your workflow to use this gimbal. This arm here, which is the problem, the part that I can't actually balance, ranges from -3 to +3, so it has a range of 6. Whereas on the Air 2, it had a range of 8. So that little couple of extra, I'm guessing this is, I think, inches, maybe centimeters, I don't know. Whatever it is, it's bigger on the Air 2, which means there's probably about that much space, which is just enough to be able to balance either of these two things. Not the case on that. So it will balance that way, and we can lock that off. However, the problem lies when you try to balance it like this. You can see it's going backwards. So it's going this way, so I need to be able to push it further this way. But there's nowhere else for it to go. No way, not a chance. The center of gravity is just too high. This arm right here just isn't long enough. So on a grip, also not gonna work. Now in the manual, it does say if you want to balance a heavier load, you can actually just flip this around. Let's just turn this off for a second here, like that, and then the camera would be flipped around the other way. It says that that is the method you'd want to use for a heavier setup. I don't know why that is, but needless to say, I've tried it that way too, and again, with either of these, just not possible, it doesn't balance. Maybe on the box, they should put a little disclaimer where the supported cameras is that it doesn't support if you use a cage or a grip. Maybe a good idea for the future. Or just make this arm a little bit longer, and then that way we don't have any of those problems. So the RGB light, it looks super cool. It does. I will be the first person to admit that. But you've also got to think, if you're shooting with this big setup and you're already doing the duck walk to counteract any up and down movement, now you have a flashing cycling light on there. It's just begging for attention even more. So if you don't like people looking at you or asking you what that is, you probably won't like that. Now you can dim this down, you can change the brightness of it in the settings, you can also turn it off. So that's there if you wanted to. It's nice that they included the ability to do that. The other purpose for this is actually tells you the mode that you're in. So depending on the color of the light, it will actually let you know which mode that you're in. And if you stretch the motors, if you can force it to, there you go. If you can force it to not like what you're doing, the red light comes on there just to tell you it's gone into lock or motor protection mode. So the motors aren't gonna go and work any harder because you're already forcing them to their limit. So it goes red when you're doing that. So sleep mode will flash green, sport mode will be a solid blue, inception will be a solid blue. So if you're in those modes, then it will actually tell you, but the screen also tells you the same thing anyway. So personally, I don't like this and I will be turning it off. Build quality overall is not bad, but it does feel very, very plasticky, very toy-like, especially with the RGB light on there. Compared to the Air 2, it's definitely a cheaper build quality. That being said, it's also more money, so you pay for what you get. So this is the AirCross 2. Big problem for me is the fact that it doesn't balance with what I use on a regular basis, that camera in the cage. So that creates a problem for me. I don't know how I can use this in my regular workflow to constantly have to be changing plates around just to use this. It's kind of frustrating. So to me, the Air 2 would make more sense if you want to use a heavier load, or let's say a load that's the camera's going to be up a little bit higher than just straight on the plate. So you really got to consider that when you're purchasing this. So this is the Moza AirCross 2. I'll put a link down below if you are thinking about picking this up. Otherwise, appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.